March 4, 1801, Montpelier, Virginia. A 15-year-old enslaved boy named Paul Jennings stood barefoot in the mud, holding James Madison's horse. The new president was leaving for Washington. "Keep the books safe," Madison told him. Paul nodded. He had no idea he would one day own the desk those books sat on. Paul was born into slavery on Madison's plantation. His mother, a seamstress, taught him to read using discarded newspapers. By age 10, he could recite the Constitution. Ironic, since it counted him as 3/5 of a person. When Madison became president in 1809, Paul went with him to the White House as a footman. He polished Dolly's silver, served Jefferson's wine, and, secretly, copied state papers by candlelight. Then came 1814, the night the British burned Washington. Paul was the one who actually saved George Washington's portrait.
Team. This is the
While
crucial
Dolly
point.
posed for history,
Precision
Paul
is
and two
everything.
French servants wrestled the 8-foot frame off the wall, smashed it, and rolled the canvas. He hid it under his bed until the fires died. After Madison's death in 1836, Dolly fell into debt. She sold Paul to a Louisiana planter for $200. But here's the twist no textbook prints. Paul bought his freedom with White House secrets. While enslaved, he had memorized every guest list, every whispered plot. In 1840, he sold a tell-all manuscript to a Boston abolitionist for $120, enough to buy his papers. The book, A Colored Man's Reminiscence of James Madison, became the first insider account of the White House. In it, Paul revealed, Madison knew slavery was wrong, but freed no one in his will. Dolly sold 100 slaves to pay gambling debts. The famous rainbow portrait of Washington? Paul saved it, not Dolly. Now free, Paul returned to Washington. He worked as a messenger for Daniel Webster, the senator who tried to stop the Civil War. In 1848, Paul planned the largest slave escape in U.S. history, the Pearl Incident. 77 enslaved people boarded a schooner in D.C. Paul smuggled food and maps. The ship was caught. 2 of Paul's daughters were aboard. They were sold south. Paul never saw them again. But he didn't stop. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Paul, now 64, walked into the White House, this time as a free man, and asked for a job. Lincoln hired him as a doorkeeper. Paul stood at the East Room entrance the night Lincoln died, holding the door as the body was carried out. Here's the part that breaks brains. Paul Jennings bought a piece of the White House. In 1870, the government auctioned off old presidential furniture. Paul bid $12 for Madison's writing desk, the same one where the Constitution was drafted. He won. For the rest of his life, he wrote letters on the desk that had once enslaved him. Paul died in 1874. His memoir sold 5,000 copies, huge for the time. But history erased him. Dolly got statues. Paul got a footnote. His descendants fought for decades to get a plaque in the White House. In 2012, they finally did. A tiny brass marker in the basement, reading, Paul Jennings, 1799-1874. Today, tourists walk past the desk in the Smithsonian labeled Property of James Madison. No mention of the enslaved boy who bought it. No mention that the man who saved Washington's portrait was sold twice to save his family. The White House, a symbol of freedom, was built, burned, and rebuilt by hands that were never free. Paul Jennings didn't just witness history, he owned it, literally, and America still hasn't paid the debt.